Okay. Okay. Here we are. Had a little glitch, and I just
Okay.
wanted to make
Just
sure that
start.
was
We
fixed.
can just start
So,
over.
yeah. Start over again. Yeah. Yeah. So go for it.
You want
So
to you
who are
want to
you?
do
And
your part too, or
oh, oh, sure, sure, sure. Okay, guys. We had a little glitch, and I apologize for that. So we are back. We are on the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast, and I have with me Lieutenant Colonel, retired Oakland McCulloch, and I have him here to speak with us uh, in regards to uh, officer slash enlisted service member issues and uh, just talk about the psychology around that because there's a big, I don't know if you guys ever watched An Officer and a Gentleman, but it's kind of like that. And I mean, it kind of goes along those lines where, the officer may think very highly of himself and very low of the enlisted service members. So I brought on Mr. McCullough to, I guess, just have a short conversation as it relates to that because, you know, things changed a lot since we were in the service, sir. I
yeah,
mean, I don't know. I don't know what it's like now. I really don't. But I would like for us to at least talk about it as far as how we saw it.
yeah. I'm
So
looking forward to that
again,
conversation.
yeah, me too. So first question is, who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do, sir? So kick
Okay.
off with that.
Yeah. So I grew up in Northern Illinois, a small little farm town, and now I live in Daytona Beach, Florida, because I'm not living through winters in Northern Illinois ever again. And I got my commission as an infantry officer through Army ROTC at Northern Illinois University. Did my first 5 years as an Army officer in the infantry, and then I did my last 18 years as an armored cavalry officer, so 23 years total. When I retired from the
Okay.
Army, I ran a food bank for a couple of years. Um, Very large food bank, covered 52 counties along the Gulf Coast of the United States, and took over that job right before the BP oil spill. So I was a little busy during that time. Then I've done my last
Mm.
12 years. I was recruiting for Army ROTC here in Daytona Beach, Florida. And I retired from that job 1 October. And now all I do is go out and speak about servant leadership and success to as many people as I can.
Keyword is success. That's good. Uh, you did serve time in Iraq and Palestine, did you?
So I was in the first Gulf War, 1990-91, with the 24th Infantry Division. And then I did peacekeeping operations in Bosnia and in Kosovo.
Did you see any war activity there? I mean, like first hand, like
In
did
the
you had
first
to?
Gulf War, I did. Nobody shot at us in Bosnia or Kosovo, but had a couple, close encounters, but nobody shot at us.
Mm,
Only in the first
okay.
Gulf War.
Uh, do you still think about those days?
I every once in a while I'll think about what some of the things that we did, and I've been on now 175 podcasts, and people would sometimes bring up, want to hear a story about what happened or whatever. But it is what it is. I mean, you don't
Yeah,
forget your memories, but it's not
yeah,
something I think about all the time.
right. It just comes across here and there. Yeah, I get
You
it.
know,
I
when I
get it. The
really
reason,
think, every once I'll smell something that reminds me of that, and the
mm,
smell will take me back. That's where that's what really triggers it for me. And I'll give you an example, and it doesn't even
go
have to
ahead.
do with the Army. When I was a kid, I used to work on this one guy's farm, and his daughter was one of my best friends, and she helped do all my paperwork to get me into West Point. And we had our 40-year class reunion a couple of years ago, and she wasn't going to be able to make it because she was working out on her dad's farm. It was during harvest season and they were harvesting. And I said, well, I'm not coming down up there and not seeing you. So when do you want me to come by the farm? And again, this is a farm I worked on as a kid. She told me. I pulled up there in the car, parked the car in the exact same place I used to park it when I was working for her dad, opened the car door. And when that smell hit me, I was 18 years old again.
Mm. Yeah, I've heard of people telling me about certain smells or uh certain things that people do. It's like, and it gives them that mental jolt.
Yeah.
It makes them think, damn, I remember back in here, I used to do this, and yeah. And sometimes it wasn't a good reflection though,
Yeah.
sir.
Well, it could, yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes
It could be
those,
that.
yeah, and because I've had a few conversations, during my time at the VA hospital here in Milwaukee, that uh people didn't have certain positive reactions to certain smells because it reminded them of gunpowder,
Yeah.
or the way a person looked at you is like, oh, it kind of gave you like a thought about being in the Middle East or wherever, um, because for me, uh, I don't like tight spaces. Uh, I'm not claustrophobic, but being in confined areas, it triggers me. And it sometimes makes me think back to my time in North Carolina. You know, I've had some good days, and I had some not so good days. I mean, it's just what it is,
That's right.
But
That's life.
uh yeah, yeah. But with all the training and the in your face bullshit and all the cussing, and you know what it is.
Yep.
It just, being in certain environments, it triggers me and it takes me back there. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not so good. So
Yeah.
uh yeah, so I'm glad for you that you have, good memories, because like I said, for some people like myself, some of those memories and those flashbacks, they weren't always so good. Um, but I do want to jump into the officer slash enlisted dynamic. Um, you are a retired lieutenant colonel, so you've been in service for 23 years, and thank you for your service, sir. Um, you've seen a lot. What can you give me some examples of what you saw and what you had to personally do to, I guess, as it relates to the issues between officers and enlisted?
Right.
Because like I said earlier, there's this ego thing, you know what I mean? That, I'm an officer, I'm a captain. It's like, so you should, dig 7 holes for me if I tell you to. It's like, people need to understand that things weren't always so rosy and pretty, being in the military, because you had some hard-nosed officers.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it
can
doesn't
you
have
go?
to be that way. I mean, it is in
No.
certain situations, and there are certainly officers out there who have an ego that they don't know when to put it aside. And look, we all have an ego, every one of us, and we want
Sure.
people to have an ego because that's what drives us to be successful. That's what drives us to be the best at what we
Yes,
do.
sir.
But good
Yes, sir.
leaders, officer and enlisted, both know when to put that ego aside and work for the best of the organization. And
Yes.
I guess I have a different view of my relationship. I always had pretty good relationships with my enlisted soldiers, and especially my NCOs, because I understood that I don't have all the answers. And, they got a lot of experience that I could use from. And I'll give you a perfect example. My first platoon, I was a 24-year-old lieutenant, show up at my first
Mm,
platoon. They're already out on the
mm,
range. I come in at lunchtime. All morning, they've been practicing a dismounted live fire exercise that they're going to do in the afternoon. And so I show up platoon sergeant, Sergeant First Class Pinson, never forget him. About 6'5", 250-pound country boy from Mississippi. He grabs me by the
Big
shoulder
boy.
and says, "Sir, grab an MRE. Let's go have lunch." And we went, sat underneath a tree. We're eating our MRE lunch, and he looks at me and he says, "You know, sir, you're the boss. You're the officer. You're in charge. We'll do things however you want to do them." He said, "However, I've been in the Army for 23 years." He'd been in the Army almost as long as I'd been alive. He said, "I've seen it done every which way it can be done. If you, I'm going to tell you when you're messing up. If you still want to do it that way, we'll do it that way. You're the boss." He said, "But I'm going to tell you." And, you know, I listened to him. Why would you not listen to somebody like that? That has that much experience. And so I did. And I give him a lot of credit for helping develop me into the leader that I am. And, you know, one time I remember vividly, I remember I walked in at one morning, I was thinking about something all night, and I said, "You know, Sergeant Pinson, I want to do this." And he looked at me and he said, "Do you really?" And I said, "Well, maybe not." So I think, you know, but I've seen the exact opposite. I've seen lieutenants walk in and not be able to put their ego aside and think that they're better than their NCOs. And, you know, had their soldiers draw their weapon for them. No soldier ever drawed a weapon for me. I drew my own weapon. I cleaned my own weapon, put it back in the arms room. You know, but I saw plenty of the other side of that where officers didn't know when to put their ego aside or couldn't, and treated NCOs very badly. And you get what you deserve when you do that. You know, I never, I very, very seldom. I think one time in my life, in my career, did I have to say, "Okay, soldier, I'm the officer, you're the enlisted, you're going to do what I told you to do." And I consider that a failure. Now, I got it. There's some people out there that, you know, they just aren't going to do what you want them to do. But most of the time, I just had to walk in and say, "Hey, guys, this is what we got to get done." And they were more than happy to do it because they knew I wasn't ordering them. I was telling them what we had to get done and what we had to get done, because I did it right alongside them when I could. Now, officers can't always do that. There are times when you got to be in the office, but I got out of my office and was out with my soldiers every chance I got, and that earned their respect.
So have you had to talk to some officers about their behavior at some point in your career?
I did. I talked to a couple of my peers about their relationship, you know, with their NCOs, and gave them some advice. A couple took it, a couple didn't. Hey, you know, they're grown men; they can do what they want to do. But you know, I saw that what some of the things they were doing wasn't for the best of their organization, which included my organization, because we were part of a company or a battalion, and you know, you're only as strong as your weakest link, and they were certainly the weakest link. They're part of the organization was. So I was trying to make the organization better. I wasn't trying to tell the guy I was better than he was. I was just pointing out some things that I hoped that if people saw me doing things, they'd point things out for me too.
Understood. Yeah. Yeah. Was there any training for officers to, I guess, know their role, so to speak, and effectively communicate with others?
So I think that's one of the places, at least when I was going through officer training, that was probably one of the weakest parts, was what is your role versus your platoon sergeant's role as a brand new lieutenant. And when I ran my Army ROTC program, that was the last assignment I had on active duty. I ran the ROTC program at the University of South Alabama in Mobile. So I was helping to produce that next generation of lieutenants for the Army. One of the first things I did, and it wasn't in the curriculum, but I didn't care, we were going to do it anyway, is I grabbed another great NCO that I worked with, and I say I worked with, he was probably a better leader than I was, Master Sergeant David Powell. And he had, you know, he was a ranger, he was ranger instructor, a great NCO. And I grabbed him and I said, this is what I want to do. I said, I want to have a class with all the seniors and just lay it out there, what is expected of them. So I'll play the company commander, you play the platoon sergeant, and we will let them know exactly what we expect of a brand new lieutenant as their company commander and as their platoon sergeant. And then we'll tell them what we expect of them. We'll open it for questions, and we'll take it from there. And I think I've had cadets who told me that was the best class they ever got.
Nice, nice. I remember when I was working as a corrections officer, I had to learn when to be quiet sometimes. I had to learn to listen, and not just to other coworkers, but to the inmates. I had to actually like shut my butt up and listen, because just because they were incarcerated doesn't mean that they're bad, and it doesn't mean that they're all liars. You know, you have to discern truth from fiction, and so I had to learn how to listen. I had to learn how to be quiet at times, and I had to learn to be fair.
Yeah.
That was something that was very paramount for me in my career as a corrections officer and as a corrections lieutenant. Especially during those years when I was a lieutenant, I had to, make sure that other guards were doing their jobs appropriately. And there were times that I had to pull some officers aside, and I never used my ego with them, because number one, I came from where they were.
Sure.
I had to, I had to be that guard for the day, so I followed, that sort of experience. And once I became a supervisor or a lead, if you will, I mean, I put away my ego. And to this day, sir, when I bump into people that I used to work with, I would get respect from everybody.
Right.
Because now, I'm not saying that I was a pushover. I'm just saying that I had the sense to put the badge aside and just be who I am.
Right.
There was a time where I had to put the badge on and do my job, but when people saw me, they saw me.
Right. Well, I think you hit on a key point here about communication and about listening. Again, as a leader, you do not, I don't care how long you've been doing whatever you're doing, you don't have all the answers, you don't have all the knowledge, you don't have all the skills and all the abilities. A good
Correct.
leader knows how to use those things for the people that work for them, or that they work with. And I, the way I always did it, kind of like what you're saying, and listening. So what I would always do is, whenever I had a problem or an issue, or we had to do something or solve something, I'd call my junior leaders, my NCOs in, or my junior officers at some point in my career. And I'd say, okay, guys, this is what we got to do. Give me some ideas. And they'd start throwing ideas out there. And I didn't make any judgments about any of the ideas, although one of the things you quickly figure out if you use this method is that somebody that you think is your top performing star will give you a horrible idea sometimes. And the person you think is the weakest person in your organization will give you a great idea sometimes. You just never know. But what I tell leaders is, look, when you do that, you're under no obligation to use anybody's idea. None of those ideas. You're the leader. You're the one that has to decide what the good ideas are and what the bad ones are, and figure out how to use the good ones. And generally what I figured out, for me at least, was I'd use a little bit of that person's idea and a little bit of that person's idea and a little bit of my idea, and we'd blend that together, and that was our solution. And you did two things when you do it that way. Number one, you earn their respect because you asked their opinion. Even if you didn't use it this time, you might use it next time. At least you asked and you listened. And number two, no, it's no longer Colonel McCulloch's solution. It's our solution.
I'll
We all had
pursue
a say in it. Now they got skin in the
Yeah.
game. Now they want to make
Yes.
sure it works. So
Yes.
I think that is a way that has always worked for me. Now I know I got it. There are times when you can't do that. You don't have time. People shooting at you, whatever. There are times when you got to
Yep.
just make a decision and this is what we're going to do. But most of
Yep.
the time, you can take the time to ask people's opinion.
It won't hurt.
No. I mean, even if you don't, like I said, even if you don't use any of their ideas, what did it hurt to listen to them?
Nothing. Nothing. I mean, and like you said, what's the worst that can happen is you don't utilize what they, what they add, what you told them to do. So it it doesn't matter. But I like I said, I had to learn how to, like I said, A, listen, B, uh, be myself, and there's one thing that I used to do too that I have to take away from what you said was I asked questions of the people that I had to work for. And I always told the people, I said, hey, I believe in being fair but firm. And what I mean by that is, uh, I treat everybody with respect.
Yeah.
Everybody, officer, inmate, it doesn't matter. When I see you, I'm saying hi to you. I'm being respectful of you. All I ask is I get that same respect in return. When you step out of line with me, I'm going to step back. And I got a bigger badge. I got a bigger badge than you.
That's right.
So you don't want to play that game with me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to
But
win.
if you treat people right, 99% of the people will give you that respect that you deserve. Because
Correct.
you earned it. They're not giving it to you.
Yep.
You earned it. And
Yes.
that to me, that's the key. You got to earn the respect of the people that you have the privilege to lead. And it is a privilege to be the leader. I
Yes, it
mean,
is.
and
Yes,
I
it is.
think too many leaders today have forgotten that, or were never taught that it is a privilege, and that it isn't about them. It's about the people they have the
Mhm.
privilege to lead. And if you treat people that way, if you lead that way, that it's about them first, and then maybe we'll talk about you, maybe if we have time. But it's about them
Yeah.
and their needs and their wants and helping them get where they want in their career. When I tell people that, especially young lieutenants, they say, but Colonel McCulloch, I want my next promotion. And I said, listen to me. If you do this, if you treat people right and you put their
Right.
interest ahead of your own and you help them become better people and eventually maybe better leaders, then they're going to make your organization better, which in the end is going to get you your promotion. But you got it for the right reason, not because you were greedy, but because you helped other people.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 And I mean, respect goes such a long way, especially in the military, because you have to depend on your soldiers to take care of make sure that the whole function of the unit is intact, right? So wouldn't it make sense for people that are in charge to, you know, really like put their best foot forward and really trust the people that work for them? And, you know, I don't know. I just think that it would just make sense to to have a well-oiled machine. You want to make sure that your parts are good and not just physically good, but mentally good. I mean, and you want them to know that, hey, you can trust me. I'm here for you. So with that said, have you ever had to talk to anybody? And I think we went about this earlier, but I'm gonna ask again. Have you had can you tell me of a moment of when you had to pull somebody aside and say, hey, you're messing up,
Yeah.
you
So
know?
what my first company in command was a basic training company command, OSIT, at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I had drill sergeants, and
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
so I made it a point that they never knew when I was going to show up. Drove my wife nuts, but I'd get up in the middle of the night and go to work at 2 o'clock in the morning, or I'd show
Yeah,
up, 4:30 in the morning, or 10 o'clock at night, or they just never knew when I was going to show up. And I did it because I didn't want them to know when I was going to be there. But a couple times I caught them doing things that they should not have been doing. Nothing that was going to kill a recruit or a private, but certainly not respectful. No, I got it. Basic training is supposed to be hard, and it's supposed to break you down a little bit so that we can build you back up.
Yeah.
But there are limits, and a couple of them were getting pretty close to limits. And I just told the privates, go to the room. And I went into the office with the drill sergeant, and I said, okay, we're getting too close to that line. And if we cross that line, now we're in trouble. I said, you don't want to cross that line, because if I catch you crossing that line, you will be in trouble. I promise you, because we got to treat these soldiers like soldiers. If you want them to act like soldiers, treat them like soldiers. If you want them to act like hoodlums, then treat them that way, and they will. But so I did have to have that conversation a couple times with a couple drill sergeants.
Yeah. I know when I was in boot camp, my drill instructors did not like me, and they made a point to tell me that they did not like me. And I was threatened a few times by one in particular. It got so bad, Lieutenant Colonel, that this one particular DI, he actually wanted me to go outside and go fisticuffs with him.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, he was like, we can go outside right now, and here I am, a $150. I just turned 18, and this is my first experience of adulthood, getting cussed out every day, getting threatened every day, have to sleep with one eye open. They took it past far.
Yeah.
Now, this is Marine Corps boot camp, so I don't know how Army boot camp was, but in the Marines, they took it far.
Yeah.
They took it very far.
And I'm sure that some Army company commanders let it go further than I would. I just knew where my limit was, what I was willing to accept them to do to these privates, and I just made it very clear what that limit was. And like I said, and I just made sure that they didn't know when I was going to show up. So they couldn't say, well, the boss is gone, company commander's gone for the night, so we can do whatever we want, because they didn't know when I was coming. And I think that was good for them, because that just made sure that they weren't going to get as close to that line as they might have gotten otherwise if they knew I was gone all night. So I think, everybody, the drill sergeant benefited because they didn't get in trouble. The privates benefited,
right.
And our organization benefited because we were producing better soldiers, in my opinion, than maybe some of the other companies that didn't have that control of how close they were getting to that line or stepping over that line.
Yeah. In the Marines, sir, that line, man, I tell you, you talk about that line, and I have to say there was many a day that line was crossed. So,
yeah, well, that's too bad, and hopefully that's still not going on. But you never know. I mean, I always tell people, look, the people who work for you, whether they're drill sergeants, NCOs, or if you're in the civilian world, whoever works for you, they are like your children. They will do what you let them do. If you train them to a standard and you hold them to that standard, they'll meet that standard, 99% of them. If you let them do bad things, they will do bad things. That's just the way that's human nature. So it's on you. If somebody's doing something bad in your organization and you're the leader, look in the mirror. That's the first place you got to look, because you let it happen. You can't prevent everybody from doing something bad, but once they do it, then you got to make sure that you make it crystal clear that is unacceptable and will not be accepted in your organization, because every time you accept something that's substandard, you just set a new standard.
Yeah, you do. I mean, and like you said, and I agree, hopefully things are better, um, and not just in the boot camp aspect of the military, but outside, regarding their work stations and things of that nature. So um, I want to ask you about your book. You are an author. Um, Talk about your book that you came up with right quick.
Yeah, so I wrote and published a book, published it in February 2021. Um, and when I wrote the book, I wanted to, if you want to read a book about leadership theory, pass my book, because I don't even mention the word theory in my book. It's not about theory. Theory is important and it's good, but that isn't what makes you a good leader. You can know all the leadership theory in the world and
Mm-hmm.
can't lead yourself out of a paper bag. So my book it's about everyday things that leaders can do to help improve their leadership skills and abilities and empower the people they have the privilege to lead to be better people and better leaders eventually. And
What's the
that's
book called?
it really is. It's a very everyday things. And I use a lot of my personal examples. I use other examples from not only the military, I use some from the food bank. I use some from when I was a government service officer. I use some from when I was a kid. So I use all kinds of examples. And this book is not only for military people. People think, well, Lieutenant Colonel wrote it. He wrote it for military. Good leadership is good leadership, whether it's no matter what profession it's in. If you know that leadership is about two things. It's about people and it's about trust. And if you understand that, you can lead any organization, because wherever you learned your leadership skills and practiced them, they transfer to whatever profession you move to. Now you may have to,
Mm-hmm.
the principles don't change. You may have to change how you implement those principles based on, I mean, things I did in the Army, I certainly didn't do in the food bank. The principles of leadership did not change. How I used them and how I implemented them changed a little bit.
Got it. What's the name of the book?
So that I titled it Your Leadership Legacy, Becoming the Leader You Were Meant to Be. Um, and I purposely named it Your Leadership Legacy because I think legacy is huge as a leader. And to me, legacy has two parts. A very small part of your legacy is what you actually did in that organization. Now, that does matter because in the real world, results do matter. Maybe in fantasy land where everybody's a winner and everybody gets a trophy, maybe not. But in the real world where we live, results do matter.
Yeah.
So a small part of your legacy is what you did. If you tie
Yeah.
all your legacy to what you did in that organization, then what happens when the next leader comes in, you leave and the next one comes in and changes everything? Where's your legacy then? The largest part of your legacy is that next generation of leaders that you helped produce. That's the way you're going to have influence in that organization and many other organizations for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Okay. Okay. So what's next? What's next on the books for Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCulloch?
Yeah.
What's
Well,
next on the line for you?
I'm working on my second book. And it's going to be about success. And again, it's not going to be any pie in the sky. It's going to be everyday things you can do to help improve your chances of being successful. There are no guarantees. There isn't a cookie cutter solution. I can't say with a checklist, do these 10 things and you're going to be successful. Anybody who tells you that is lying to you. Okay. Those 10 things can help you possibly be successful, but nobody can guarantee you success no matter what you do. Let's be honest. So that's on the books for me. I'm working that. And then I'm really working on, I'm getting out and speaking on the speaking circuit. I'm talking to a bunch of conferences and associations and some companies, universities, and I'm talking about leadership, trying to pass on some of the lessons I've learned over 40 years of being a leader.
Nice. So how can people reach you?
So I have a website. It's www.ltcoakmcculloch.com. And on there, it has my cell phone number. It has my email address. It has links to all my social media. So, we connected on LinkedIn, and that's the one I use the
Yes,
most.
yes,
But I'm also
yes.
on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on X. So, I got it. My YouTube channel is up on that website as well. That I've posted some of my podcasts I've been on. I posted some of the video clips of some of my speaking engagements, so you can get a feel for what it looks like when I'm talking to your audience. And that's the easiest way. If you want to get in touch with me, get on LinkedIn or shoot me an email, and we'll set up a time to hop on a Zoom like we did.
Good, good. And just so you know, sir, I took your quote. Good leadership is good leadership. That was a nugget. That's a gem.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, it doesn't matter where you learned it or where you practiced it, because it's about people
Mhm,
and trust. Those two
mhm.
things.
And you can't be effective if you don't have trust of your
No,
people.
no, not at
Not
all.
at all.
You may have the
Might as well
title,
just
but
hang
you
it
don't.
up.
You aren't really the leader.
No, no. You're just the body.
Yeah,
So I thank you for taking the time to speak with me, sir. I really do appreciate that. I want us to remain in contact. And let me know how
absolutely.
things go in Michigan. Let me know how things go in Michigan during your speaking engagements.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a couple of speaking engagements coming up. Next month I'll be in the state of Washington talking to all the fire chiefs, and then in June I've got all the police chiefs in the state of Michigan. So, yeah, I've got a
Okay.
couple speaking engagements coming up. I've got probably 6 or 7 that are already booked for the rest of the year. I'm working on a few more, but yeah, absolutely, we need to stay in contact. And I
Yes,
appreciate you
sir.
having me on the show. This has been great, Mark.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it. So I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your day, sir. And thank you guys for taking the time to listen to the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. It has been an honor and a privilege to take this time to speak with Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCulloch, retired.
Thank you.
Let me put that in there, retired. So you have yourself a good evening, sir.
You too.
All right. You guys take care.